This is Comic Geek Speak episode 1605, Captain America Civil War movie review.
I'm Shane Kelly.
I'm Adam Murdo.
I'm JP.
And I'm Chris Everly.
All right, welcome to the show. How's everybody doing?
We is good.
Thanks for having me. This is JP. I guess I'll just introduce myself. I'm glad to be back. We've been on a few other shows, and appreciate you guys having me again. Thank you.
Usually it's Marvel movies that brings you back to the studio.
Yeah, definitely. Love them.
Yeah, well, glad to have you here, JP.
Yeah, thanks for having me again.
Yeah, always nice to welcome a fellow Quasar fan.
Oh, yeah. I figure we mention that a little later, but it's good to kind of get out of the way.
All right, so all of us got to see Civil War this weekend, not together, which we used to do pretty good at.
Yeah, it's gotten
pretty good at doing
increasingly scattershot over the years. But Chris out in Jersey has he's been keeping the flame alive by inviting us all to the May premiere. Well, any movie that coincides with Free Comic Book Day, pretty much. There's a standing invitation to go out to northern Jersey and join him and his coterie. So it was myself and Chris and his two sons and Danny and Pants going to see this movie on Friday night after it opened. And Chris and I were the only ones in the party who had not already seen it at least once.
Oh, my God.
Oh, wow. That's impressive.
Yeah,
wow.
A lot of eager beavers.
And my friend, it was an honor to have you all there. It was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
I was panicking a little bit because my son had a soccer tournament all weekend, and what seats were available where I wanted to go were available only during game times, which there was no way I was going to make. So I was trying to schedule it sometime around that, and nothing was working. And I'm like, man, this is going to tick me off. I'm not going to get to see it till next week sometime. And Wednesday night, the Fox up here added, as they were adding shows, I would literally watch the screen to buy seats, and I would go back to check the calendar on the computer and go back and the seats were gone.
Wow.
And this is like 10, 11 o'clock at night through various nights. And I'm like, oh, I gave up. So then,
Shane, I'm sorry, Shane, go ahead.
Well, then Wednesday, they added a show Friday at 4:45 p.m. I bought tickets. I talked to my boss. I got out of work a little bit early, and I took them then. It was perfect.
Yeah, but isn't that a thing? Like, that's for me, too. Like, I almost feel anxious to go see it because it's not even other people spoiling things by accident. It's more like even just commercials. I tend to see right after the show. The movie comes out, commercials tend to give away more.
Yeah, they do.
Or articles online to some thread. So it's like, I almost feel like anxious. I have to go see it sooner. Maybe just because I'm more of a diehard comic person. I don't know if that's what you guys are thinking too.
The longer you wait, the greater the risk of being spoiled.
Yeah.
I don't mind trailers, seeing them and finding stuff out that way. I do mind after the fact, though, when the commercials start showing a lot more. That bugs me.
Well, Ryan mentioned to me that apparently there was a Lego set release, Shane, that showed Ant-Man as Giant Man.
Yes, there was.
And it was released before the film.
Yes, there was.
So if you are a Lego fan and a Marvel fan, you bought that actually spoiled a really fun moment in the movie.
Right.
Yep.
Ian
Sure
Levinstein said the same thing to me. There was a Lego set that spoiled that detail.
Myself,
it was spoiled by someone else.
Sorry!
Yeah, I was spoiled by that too. I saw that somewhere. I'm like, he gets
big. He gets big. Crap.
It's an awesome moment in the movie. It really is.
Yeah. But anyways, Legos.
I still love Legos.
My son loves Legos.
I do too. All right. So, general impressions, one sentence, and then we'll go in details.
Single sentence.
Single sentence.
You don't know what you're asking of me here, Shane.
I know. That's to get the first impressions through, and then we'll dive into your minutia detail. I don't see a little paper with tiny writing on.
I usually don't for movie reviews, but I could have. You want me to knock something out for you here?
Yeah, quick, jot something down.
You should have like a dummy like notepad with just random notes for every movie. It's the same thing, right?
Yeah, I should. I should have one of those minor lamps on my head and just sit there in the theater.
I'm sure there are people that do that.
No, it's probably going to be a compound sentence, but it's
All right.
It was tremendously entertaining, and the term game changer is not misapplied.
Okay. JP?
I would say satisfying and met my expectations.
Chris?
Met my expectations to the point that I nearly wept with joy.
And I concur with all those sentiments. I was thrilled with everyone's interaction in the movie and the time they were given to do so. Totally met my expectations. See, I went a second sentence because I was last.
And I'll speak for Danielle, Shane, because she
Go ahead.
wanted me to just mention that she really enjoyed the film, but she still thinks Winter Soldier is the best Marvel movie.
Yes, and she agrees with you, Shane, that everybody got enough screen time. She still wishes there were more female characters in the movie to split up the screen time available.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I thought Black Widow was a little underused. I agree that Winter Soldier still, to me, more my favorite than this one. However, that's still not my favorite Marvel movie. They're still in my top 5, but it's still not my favorite.
And what is your favorite, brother?
I still like the first Avengers because that was the end-all, be-all of bringing something together that I never thought would work as well as it did, and it blew me away. And the first Iron Man, Guardians, Winter Soldier, and Ant-Man or Civil War. Now I got to figure out my fifth. Those are still my top 4 or 5-ish ones.
Okay, well, I'll agree with you that the Winter Soldier didn't impress me quite as much as it did some people. It was still, an achievement of filmmaking, and just did something a little bit different with the superhero characters. We've said it felt more like a political action thriller than it did like a superhero picture as we've understood them in the past. This one, however, unlike Winter Soldier, comes very close to toppling the first Avengers movie for me in terms of quality and enjoyability.
Yeah, and I'll make more decisions about that when I see it a few more times. Because I can see that too.
And I'm sure you'll be listening to it a lot as well.
Yeah, I think Murd and I...
Quite true.
And Murd, we talked about this a number... I think we're on the same wavelength with a lot of things because I feel exactly the same way where I thought the Winter Soldier was good, but I'm just not as impressed as everyone else. So I'm still along the lines of the first Avengers and then this film as being like my top 2. So I don't know if there's other people that feel like we do, but I agree with you. But yeah, I mean, there's just I think for me the Winter Soldier was a little bit dark for my taste. So it's just like, we all like different type of food, we like different type of movies. I just felt like this was a nice balance of that interjection, and I'm sure we'll get to it, of humor really made it more up my alley than the Winter Soldier. But I did feel like it had a lot of Winter Soldier feel to it, so that's why maybe it's hitting more pistons across the board. And I just made that phrase up now.
and to piggyback on that, I think that's a great point because if you look at the 3 major fights in the movie, so you have the Crossbones brawl in the beginning, then you have the massive hero-on-hero battle in sort of like the set piece in the middle, and then you have that brutal battle between Iron Man and Captain America and the Winter Soldier at the end, and they all sort of captured a different tone. Like the Crossbones battle really felt like right out of Winter Soldier, like that had that feel to it. The intrigue, the espionage, and the middle battle. I mean, I was just grinning ear to ear. I was like, wow, I'm watching a Marvel comic come to life. I mean, that middle battle, I think, was just a masterpiece in terms of just capturing the feel of the Marvel Universe. And when the heroes had those, quote, misunderstandings where they have to fight. And then I thought the third battle just really captured, in a very, and I mean this positively, in a very unsettling way, just how deep the rift had become between Tony and Steve over that horrifying revelation of what the Winter Soldier had done earlier in his Cold War career. Yeah. So I think, JP, I agree with you that I thought they balanced that tone very well.
Could we? I don't know if we're going to go sequentially, but could we just fast forward to that fight between Iron Man, Captain America, and then the Winter Soldier, and how, in an age of fight scenes from like, I really feel like The Matrix kind of took a lot of those, acrobatic fight scenes, and then the CGI does certain things too. I really felt like that was a satisfying enhanced fist fight that I was kind of on the edge of who I was rooting for. So I don't know. I just was really impressed about how there wasn't so much CGI, but there was enough to keep it a little more enhanced than just people punching each other. I don't know if that's the thing we're going to talk about, but I was really into it. So I don't know if you guys felt the same way.
Well, before we go, we're going to say, because with all movie reviews, there's going to be spoilers. So look out.
I think we've already dropped a couple.
Well, we have.
It'll be in the episode
and it should
description.
be understood, but you can't review a movie without spoiling it. So there you go. I think I don't mind talking about that fight first either. For me, I was totally Team Cap from the beginning. Like before seeing the movie. How about you, Murd?
Yep, I was definitely on Steve Rogers' side.
JP?
Yeah, the same way. Yeah,
Chris?
Well, whether it's talking about the comic or the movie, I was with Captain America from the get-go because his rationale is just foolproof. You're going to trust a government bureaucracy that's, susceptible to the whims of nation states as to how you're going to run your organization.
Yeah.
The next thing you know, you're butchering some village for some government. I mean, I think they did a good job of explaining why Tony felt he had to do what he did, but for me, if you step back, there's not even a moment's hesitation as to who I think is right.
Absolutely. And I agree with that. However, by the end of that battle, at the end of the movie, I really thought both of them not only had good points of view, but were both asses about it to each other and the people around them.
Well, I think to piggyback on that, I think one of the most powerful moments in the film and in that scene, first of all, when Tony says he killed my mom, I was like, oh my God. Like at that moment, like you see, what's great about that plot device is you understand why Steve is defending Bucky because Bucky really is innocent. He was brainwashed. He didn't mean to do that.
He had no
clue. But
clue.
at the same time, if someone just broke your mother's neck and you just saw it on a video, you're going to want to kill that person.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No matter what excuses that person may have.
And I think they really captured. And when Steve admitted to Tony that he knew Hydra killed his parents, and he had acknowledged that he was hiding that from him, I mean. Those were powerful moments, and which I think, again, just like with I'm so glad these directors are doing the next Avengers films, by the way, because they're taking the material and they're elevating it in scenes like that.
Yep.
And, you really feel, even though Tony and Steve are such different people, such different personalities, which they've established very well through these actors and the writing, you still feel the depth of loss that they feel. And when Tony says, you're not worthy of that shield anymore, and Steve drops it.
Uh-huh.
Now, damn well he's going to give it back to him at a key moment in the Avengers movie, probably when Thanos is about to kill everybody or something like that, but even so, it was powerful.
Yes, it was. And to add to that, when he said, you're not worthy of it, that next sentence was, my dad made that. And fine, here, it's yours, take it.
Well, that kind of talks to something I thought about before, is that the quality of acting. I don't know if we're going to get into that too much, but like, for a superhero film, I was really happy with the ability of the actors to bring forth all these characters, even the Black Panther. I'll be honest with you, I'd never heard of that actor before, and I was like, oh my God, this is the perfect Black Panther. So I mean, just everything, just I thought acting wise was on point.
That's why I think the Marvel movies in general have been so strong, is that this is not Joel Schumacher wink wink tongue in cheek the whole time. Like there's definitely, plentiful dollops of humor, and humor is part of the Marvel universe, very much so. But these actors are taking these performances seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's selling it for me and elevating it in terms of films. I mean, again, when they it was pretty graphic when they show him murder Tony's parents.
Yeah.
I mean, he squeezes that woman's neck and snaps her neck. He beats Howard Stark to death, essentially. They were not pulling punches there, no pun intended, in those scenes to really get across the gravity. And I think the actors met that level, and that's what sold it. I mean, it was powerful. And to also mention something JP mentioned about the fighting, which I thought was classic. There's a key moment where Cap lifts his shield, and he's arching forward, and then Iron Man is arching forward, hitting with their pulsar rays. It was like that Silver Age cover from Tales of Suspense come to life. I think it's issue 58, maybe. I have it in my store where they're battling each other. I mean, it was so well done.
All right, so back to the beginning. I was surprised that they dispatched Crossbones so quickly. I thought he'd be around longer, but I wasn't unhappy with that. I really thought, knowing that he was in it and knowing that there would be another bad guy, although I did not look into or hear who the bad guy was going to be, kind of manipulating things, I thought that some of the bad guys through all of these movies up to date that were around were going to come together to do something.
Kind of a Masters of Evil?
Yeah, a little bit. So I was a little surprised that it really just turned out to be one bad guy, which was fine.
Yeah. I was surprised by that too, Shane.
But it was kind of nice.
You just allow him to survive Winter Soldier and then burn him so quickly.
Yeah.
Although, on the other hand, we do now, speaking of the Masters of Evil, have a Zemo on hand, and he was allowed to survive the end of this movie, too.
Yep.
So if anyone's going to bring together a collection of Marvel Cinematic villains, Claw seems to be a pretty likely candidate.
Sure.
I think Chris and I were both a little surprised he didn't show up in Civil War. Zemo would be the most likely person to do it. And may I say that, talking of acting and the caliber thereof in this movie, JP, I think Daniel Brühl as Zemo would turn in one of the best performances.
Oh, yeah.
Just sinister and serpentine, and he was just pull a purple balaclava over his head, and he's good to get out there and form the Thunderbolts.
I heard a few other people say the exact same thing.
Yeah. Now the downside is sorry, Chris.
No, go ahead.
Another thing to say about Zemo. I'm a little sorry that his origin differed as much in the movie as from the comics as it did, because he still felt very much like Zemo. At least it's they wanted to give him a more sympathetic background, I guess, and also tie him into the occurrences of Age of Ultron by making him Sokovian. He's still a cool character, as is, but, if he doesn't have that twisted baronial heritage, that toxic relationship with his father, that bizarre fixation on his father, and also the long-standing intergenerational grudge against Captain America stemming back to World War II, he doesn't have quite the same motivations and isn't just quite at the same strength as a villain. I
was kind of thinking that when he's talked about his father, the one thing I didn't like that they tied him directly into Sokovia. I would have liked to have seen it been some other disaster that the Avengers were part of, whether we knew of it or not, because we knew before Avengers 2 that they were going around looking for the scepter, so they could have done anything anywhere in the world. I just thought it was a little too convenient that not only did they destroy Sokovia in saving it from Ultron, that Wanda was from there. Well, now Zemo's from there. So that kind of miffed me just a tiny bit. When he started talking about his father, I really thought he was going to say, and Cap did this to my father back in World War II. And that would have made perfect sense to me, but that's not the way they went. So I'm like, I felt like that sentence was just a little missed opportunity for me.
I guess it's not impossible we might discover that he had a grandfather who was a Nazi agent back in...
I thought there was 3 level of villains, too. Crossbones, the kind of the punching villain. Zemo, the kind of planning, he didn't really throw any punches, but he did as much damage. And
Master Manipulator.
And the third one being that the government one with the general. He's kind of like the soft villain. You know what I mean? Was it General Ross?
Oh, yeah. It was also the Secretary of State.
Yeah. So
was it Secretary of War? I'm sorry.
I thought State.
Yeah, I thought so, too.
Yeah,
it was State.
Yeah, he was always kind of breathing down their throats with this Accord thing. So there's 3 levels. And I thought... And again, the biggest thing I want to say about this movie is that the directors and writers handled so many layers well. Mm-hmm. And when you have all these characters and all these kind of cross things, it's just clear enough to balance out the interesting part. So yeah.
So in the beginning, everything happens with Crossbones, and Wanda goes a little bit beyond what she wanted to, and blows up that building real good. Mm. And then Ross, like you say, JP, comes in with this whole smile, song, and dance. Well, my golf swings off and blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, but these are chords, and smacks him down on the table. I'm like, you ass. Ooh, you're nasty now. Mm. Just in one swift scene, coming in like he's all their friend, and thanks for everything, Avengers. However, we're going to slap chains on you.
That's Ross. I mean, Ross
totally.
is if you go back to his history in the Hulk, is a career military man who is very suspicious of enhanced beings. And he's obviously, especially in this version, a political operator. Mm. We can't forget granted it's years ago now, but in the Incredible Hulk movie, what he dealt with there.
Sure.
So, because the same actor, William Hurt, who's a tremendous actor. So I thought he worked well. And to go back to Zemo for a minute, I loved the interpretation of Zemo because he was, again, that master manipulator behind the scenes, but what was driving him, his grief. And I love the plot device with his cell phone, listening to the message from his now deceased family.
Yeah.
And what I liked about that character, I mean, he was doing horrible things, like he murdered that poor psychologist, left his corpse in the tub, but he blew up the Wakandans in the UN conference and all that. But he was very much a real character. Like, he wasn't just some mustache twirling villain. There was things. He was so twisted by his grief that it was driving him, which made him an incredibly dangerous adversary.
And he being the forefront for that through the entire movie also rang to what a lot of people were feeling, because you had that mother in the beginning talking to Tony after his presentation at MIT, kind of saying the same thing, just from a much smaller voice.
Yeah, she didn't become a supervillain as a result of it.
She just made him think, and all right, well, now I really have screwed things up, and now I have, in true Tony fashion, he has to go over the top to try and fix it.
That's a very good point, Shane.
I'd
almost forgotten about that.
You had that in Avengers 2. You had that before that. I mean, every time something goes wrong, he really goes beyond. I mean, you had to make, 42 different suits for by Iron Man 3.
And then he goes ahead and destroys them all, just based
trying to tone it down a little bit, and then he just can't help but go over the top to try and fix something he blames himself for, when some of it really isn't his fault. He's just assuming that responsibility.
And he kind of
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry about that. He kind of talks to that in his relationship with Potts.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And how that ripple effect is affecting him in like an interpersonal level too.
Yeah,
so that's
absolutely.
a good point. Yeah.
And Tony, it's very much in character, because Tony Stark is an extremist in everything he does in his life, for good or for bad. And he tries to dial it back, but like he said in this movie, he basically said, "I love being Iron Man." Like he couldn't give that up.
Yeah.
For Pepper or for anything else. So I thought that the way they portrayed him worked so well, because you still really like Tony Stark. He's still an heroic figure despite his flaws, but you can see how, all right, he's overcompensating and he's doubting himself. Because also, of course, we can't forget, in this version, he created Ultron, so naturally he feels that incredible sense of responsibility. And also, I thought another great little scene along those lines, when he goes to the Vision, he's like, how did you get distracted? Like, that's not supposed to happen, because he in a sense created the Vision too.
Yeah.
So, there's that sense of overwhelming responsibility he feels, which I think is well captured here.
I also thought it was nice that when you got to the aftermath of Ross's visit, and you had everybody kind of breaking up and going their separate ways for a minute on opposing sides, I like that Black Widow went one way against what we thought, I know we saw her with Iron Man in the previews and stuff like that, but I really thought she would come around faster to help Steve than what she did. And it's great that she did in the big airport battle, but I was surprised at how much she took a stand against Steve for how close they had become throughout those movies. I like the little twinge that you had of Wanda and Vision. I mean, I could see them writing it, that Vision really cared for her in a way that nobody, maybe even he, did not quite understand yet. Even protecting her from leaving that building right through the battle at the airport.
Shane, I think you're 100% correct, and I think they did a very skillful and subtle job. Again, that last scene at the end where Vision goes, that's not supposed to happen. I'm not supposed to be distracted like that.
Yeah.
Because he is developing those feelings for her. And as far as the Black Widow, what I thought was really well done there, and I agree with Danielle, I wish she had been in the film more, because I think she's one of the most compelling characters in the MCU. But,
I do too.
This is someone who's walked a line between life and death since she was a child. And her survival instincts are so keenly honed that she may have felt the moment, for the Avengers to continue, I need to stay with Stark, because this is also giving me a home, like a place where I'm not like on the run constantly.
True. Yeah.
Flitting from one, persona to the next and so forth. But I felt there's no way she's staying with Tony the whole way. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So I thought they handled her character well there.
Yep, she's been involved in international espionage too long to think that things are as simplistic as blue versus gray, black versus white, one side versus the other. So I think it's very much in character for her to
I almost felt
straddle the line.
Oh, sorry, Mern. I almost felt like she was almost on Stark's side just to kind of keep him in check. That was kind of like my quick
That's possible,
take.
sure, yeah.
Just to be like, well, if I had to choose, maybe it would be Cap, but I'm going to be on this side just to make sure they don't go too far.
And that could be, I mean, that's true to her character from the second Iron Man movie, too, where she came in just to keep tabs on Tony under Fury's orders.
Playing each side against the other for their own protection.
Yeah. After that, we go to the big meeting with the Wakandan king and prince, and I guess their subjects or whatever, as well as Steve running after Winter Soldier with Falcon, which, as those things ran kind of simultaneously, I thought they were both very well done. I was really pleased with feeling that Winter Soldier knew exactly who Steve was beyond just saying, yeah, I read about you at the Smithsonian. He just wasn't quite ready to admit it. And seeing how they brought in King, and I liked how they said T'Chaka and T'Challa, because I'll go with that since it's in the movie.
Yeah, I think we were all pretty gratified that we've been pronouncing it right all along.
At least in more popular settings.
A listener pointed out over Twitter that everyone who said T'Chaka and T'Challa in this movie was technically not a Wakandan citizen. So
Right.
They may be pronouncing it wrong, too.
And I'm okay with that, and then they'll correct us with the Black Panther movie, which is fine.
If we're wrong, there's a lot of people in the MCU who are just as wrong as we are.
But I was quite impressed with that actor. I loved the actor that played his father. I wish he would have been able to be in it more, and I hope they have more of him in some kind of way in the Black Panther movie when that comes up. But all of that happening in this early half of the movie I thought was very well done too.
A quick question. With the Black Panther's costume made of vibranium, was it always like that throughout the comics?
No.
For some reason, I remember when I was a lot younger, reading it, it just seemed like it was regular cloth. But now his costume seems really awesome, actually.
That's a result of Christopher Priest's run. He and the artist working with him said, and you're right, in all the previous incarnations, his costume, as cool as it looked, was cloth, and it would get shredded all the time.
Yeah.
And Priest said, well, he's a king of the most technologically advanced nation on Earth. Obviously, his uniform would be more protective, and then they created this whole it's the uniform, but it's all vibranium. Hence the bullets. Like when he stops Zemo from killing himself, he puts his hand right over the muzzle of the pistol, and just the bullet loses all kinetic energy essentially. So that's from early 2000s.
Okay, thanks.
One cool detail that Chris and I both picked up on. During one of the major chase scenes where it's the Panther chasing Cap, chasing Bucky through a parking garage.
Sure.
And the Panther jumps down from a pretty high level. When he lands, he doesn't make a sound.
Yeah.
Yep.
Really?
So it's not just his cat-like reflexes or what have you, but the vibranium soles of his shoes absorb the impact completely.
I love
good Foley work there.
Yeah, that's really cool. I have to look for that. I just remember the part when they're on the roof, and I think it was the people in the helicopter shooting, and he just turned to him kind of like almost like Superman, like bullets won't affect me. What are you like? Why are you bothering me with these like small little things? It's just really
this is a waste of munitions.
Yeah,
I could
it's
almost
just cool,
see him turning with a raised eyebrow, going, "Come on, really?" How about going from Black Panther? How about Martin Freeman's character as Ross, his government handler?
That's only a tantalizing glimpse of, I'm sure, what we're going to see.
Kidding.
Because he was only in 2 quick scenes. They weren't an opportunity for humor yet.
Yeah.
But I have no doubt, because of that actor, when they put him in the Black Panther film, we're going to see the full Ross glory, basically.
I really like that actor. I've liked him since I first saw him, really, which was Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And then knowing he was in The Office, the British version after that, and I've seen a few episodes of that.
Oh, it's tremendous.
And then
Absolutely
going through the Hobbit movies with him, which I like him. I'm not so thrilled about all of those movies, but I really like him in them. To watch this then, I went home Sunday night after all the festivities of soccer were over, and I ended up being able to sit down and I watched the first episode of Sherlock, the BBC Sherlock, which I've never watched before. So that was amazing too, and I can really see, just with those couple little tidbits and what I've seen of the actor in all these various parts, I can see a little bit of all of these different characters playing into how he can possibly portray this character that I've only read about in the first trade of Black Panther.
Well, who is this character? I haven't read that. Is that the character I was talking to Zemo at the end, the government guy?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. He's the government handler for Black Panther
Yeah, it's like
and the
his-
Wakandan liaison.
His liaison or attaché for T'Challa. He's the guy who comes to pick him up at the airport when he appears at the first the beginning of Priest's Black Knight Marvel Knights Black Panther run. There we go. And he's obviously based on Michael J. Fox, and he's supposed to be the king of the useless white boys, and he's kind of comedy relief and also a POV character for all the white readers of the show of that comic.
That's interesting. They went that much in depth because I wasn't familiar with that run, or I haven't read it, and that I just thought that character was just kind of made up. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Nope, he actually does have a Marvel Universe history. And I thought Martin Freeman, and I know even less about him than anybody here. Chris told me some time ago that Martin Freeman was playing the part, and I had to ask him who that was. Because I've watched like half an episode of Sherlock in my life, and I have seen all the Hobbit movies. Like you, Shane, I have mixed feelings about them, but I did like him in them, and I just don't like The Office, period. But having seen Martin Freeman play Everett K. Ross, I think he had the mannerisms. He had the snarky sense of humor. If I had a complaint, it would be that he's a little too competent and too confident.
Yeah, for what we know of the character through the comic, maybe a little bit.
I was talking with Ian Levinstein's girlfriend his ex-girlfriend, excuse me, Chris, over the weekend, about that character, and she hopes that in the future there will be a character come along to destabilize this self-confidence of his. Possibly Carol Danvers, or if we can't wait that long, maybe one of the Dora Milaje.
Sure.
Speaking of which, we got one of those in this movie, too.
Oh, that
cool,
was
too.
thrilling. That was a great little throwaway scene. When I saw that, I said, "Oh, they read everything.
Yeah.
They did their homework."
Yeah, they sure did.
I love how T'Challa said, "I'd love to see you." Basically, said, "I'd love to see you and the Black Widow go at it." Basically.
Was that the bald female bodyguard?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that was pretty sweet too. Just those little extra nods.
Who is she? Is she just his Black Panther's bodyguard?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a little more involved than that. Go listen to our Black Panther Spotlight. We go into it for 3.5 hours.
I know you guys just recorded that. I did not, as you can tell, I did not listen to it. So.
Part bodyguard, part bride in training.
Oh, okay, cool.
That he never marries.
Right.
Yeah.
Spoilers.
All right, somebody else go from there.
Oh, are we still trying to pick our way through chronologically?
Yeah, sure.
I don't.
Well, I was really affected by the death of Peggy Carter. And when Steve goes to London with Sam, and I love how they made him aware of the fact that Sharon was related to Peggy.
At that time, yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was really well done. Obviously, I'm glad they finally had them kiss a little bit after that, and because Cap's got to get a private life a little bit. Jeez, the poor guy. So
it's been how many movies?
yeah, I mean, he came out of the ice. It's been nonstop fighting. So I thought that was really well handled. And I also really love. I think Chris Evans and Anthony Mackie have great chemistry.
I do too.
And they established that in the first scene in Winter Soldier when they met on the mall, and they really do a nice job of portraying how loyal the Falcon is to Captain America. He will go anywhere with him and back him up regardless of the circumstances. Like he said, I just don't know what we're getting into because whenever you get shot at, I get shot at too. But he's not saying I'm not going to go with you.
Right.
He's always going to go with him. And I think that dynamic is really well done.
Well, and even not only that dynamic, I loved the dynamic that Falcon had with Winter Soldier, almost a brotherly hate relationship where they're just needling each other constantly about stuff.
Cap likes me best. No, Cap likes me best.
It was a riot.
And then the scene when the two of them just sit there and go, "Oh yeah," after Cap kisses Sharon.
By the way, how great was it to see a version of Red Wing?
Yes, that was my next
That
thing.
was so cool. That was
I liked
interpretation.
when he's controlling it on his arm pad. He's like to Black Widow, "Go ahead, pet it." He's cute, right?
I'm not petting that thing. His name's Red Wing.
fantastic.
I really did enjoy that scene too. As much as I thought that was the proper time for Peggy to pass, would be the third Captain America movie, being 95-ish, just like Cap and Winter Soldier really are. I thought that was a very touching scene. It didn't, as the previews came out before I saw the movie, and he kept carrying somebody, I thought, man, well, maybe they're doing something different, and that's Winter Soldier, but that doesn't make sense. And then just one day it hit me, oh, well, that's Peggy. And then that's what happened in the movie. I really loved how they revealed Sharon to be related to her. Because they did a good job of not giving you any inkling of that in Winter Soldier, but just thinking that that's where that was going to go. And then, like you said, Chris, to have them have a moment a little bit later was nice to see Cap kind of lower his defenses a little bit and take initiative for the man who's waited way too long and is an authority on it. That was kind of cool.
That's a good point too, Shane, because we have to remember these movies are work addressing two different audiences. Like, we all knew who Sharon Carter was and her significance, but someone who doesn't read the books has probably had no idea that she was related to Peggy and the significance of all that. Yeah. So I thought that was well handled.
And who's to say they would have done that in the movie? I mean, they can change that to make it more useful for their plot device if they wanted to, but I'm glad they didn't. It makes it a more complete universe and again, gives it something extra for those of us who know who that character is when we first saw her back in Winter Soldier.
And there's almost like a little bit of respect from like aunt to niece, almost like she waited until she moved on because that was always Steve's like woman. And then once she moved on, then she's like, okay, now we can progress.
Yeah.
So just a nice kind of like point of view to kind of take.
Well, and what was fun, before I saw Civil War, I listened to or watched Avengers 2, Winter Soldier, and Ant-Man, the last three to lead up to Civil War. And that was great, and I watched it. And then that whole scene came about, and then I listened to Winter Soldier again today, and it hit me when she's coming out of her apartment and Cap's going in before he finds Nick Fury in there. And she goes, yeah, that's my aunt on my phone. She's an insomniac. I'm like, oh, well, that was Peggy, son of a gun.
That was there.
That was a neat little thing from the second Cap movie.
I thought Emily Van Camp's portrayal was pretty much spot on.
Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
was pleased with the way she played the character, pleased with the way it was written for her. It would have been all too easy and, cliched, what Danny would call tropey, I think, if she had been a little more hostile towards Cap. Because that seems to be kind of that's the way it goes with the love interest in action movies these days. They sort of spurn the male character, even though we all know that they're going to be snogging by the end of the final act. Here, at least she's pleasant, she's somewhat receptive, and yet at the same time she's more than just there to be Cap's arm candy. She is a competent intelligence agent, and she proves herself good in a fight, at least once in this movie.
And we have to add to that, Mern, and I think they established this in the Winter Soldier as well, with both Sharon and the Black Widow. We have to remember, in that world, Steve Rogers is literally a living legend. Mm-hmm. So everyone around him, even someone who's cynical like Natasha, is basically going to be in awe of him, essentially. And you see in the Winter Soldier when Sharon's in the hallway, and he, granted she's on a mission, but he asks like, "You want to come in for coffee?" She's in awe of him.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's a whole nother like level you got to kind of get acclimated to if you're that character. Like, okay, this is like Captain America, who's invited me in for coffee, basically. So, I think they do a good job of just in subtle ways reminding us of what he's supposed to represent. And that's why him defying all those countries is so important, because Captain America is not some goose-stepping government agent. He is a symbol of the ideals of the United States, of the Constitution, of the American people, which doesn't mean you automatically go in line with what the government is saying.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that they maintain that approach, which is just so consistent with the character's whole purpose, basically.
All right. How about Tony finding Peter Parker?
Your unbelievably attractive aunt.
Oh, how about it? What a distraction. I mean, Aunt May is not supposed to be hot.
Quite literally unbelievable. Yeah, I was sitting there actually muttering aloud to myself, and Pants could vouch for this, that is not Aunt May.
And yet I don't care. I will take it because I love Marissa Tomei.
That's just some attractive neighbor lady that comes in and looks in on Peter every once in a while.
Nope. From here on, that's
real Aunt May is buying groceries somewhere.
Nope. That Aunt May we see 30 years from now.
I like Marissa Tomei well enough, but she's an attractive woman and a good actress, but she's not Aunt May.
No, I'm good now.
No, sorry. I rejected that. My brain rejected it.
I think there's probably a lot of I think there's a lot of people like that, and I think they kind of address that with all your hot aunt jokes, kind of, and you know what I mean, to make it a little
they
easier.
Were self-conscious about it, yeah.
You still might not agree, but they kind of like a little wink and a nod, being like, "Yeah, we know this is an Aunt May, but you know,
but she is now."
Ad-libs by Robert Downey Jr. too.
Oh my God, yeah.
How magnificent was the actor playing Spider-Man?
Oh, absolutely fantastic.
You told me, Chris, that he was trained as an acrobat?
Yes.
Was he really?
Yeah, that's what I read.
Wow.
Anyway.
Yep. Yeah, I'm just going to go on record as saying this, as far as I'm concerned, is the finest depiction of Spider-Man we have seen on film yet.
I completely agree.
You know, with all due respect to Tobey Maguire and Sam Raimi and even to Andrew Garfield.
Oh, absolutely, because I thought he did some good, too.
Yeah, there were some things I liked about the 2 movies he was in, and a lot I didn't like about the second one.
Oh, absolutely.
Neither here nor there. This really nails it.
Yeah.
I mean, this kid looked like acted like a 16-year-old kid from Queens.
Yeah.
And he was totally believable in every respect. He just looked like a kid who was somewhat naive, coming up in the world, had a lot of talent, wanted to put it to good use to do the right thing, but wasn't quite sure what that right thing was yet. So very impressionable, and that's how he was able to be taken in by Tony Stark so easily. He's obviously hero-worshipping the guy.
Sure.
All along the line. And just visually, the costume looked great. The narrowing eye slits, we were all drooling over that trailer.
I had no problem with that either.
Introduced him as Underoos.
And to find out that, just like in the Civil War comic, Tony makes a suit for him. Now, it's not the same suit, but the fact that he takes what was essentially jogging suit with goggles and turns it into what we saw with the moving eye slits makes total sense for Tony being Tony with an Iron Man suit, building something that could do that, react to his facial movements.
Right. We even got an explanation for why this was necessary.
Yeah.
Because Peter's senses had been so ramped up, he needed something to limit the visual input he was getting.
Yeah, it was just spectacular across the board. I like that they had what looked more like traditional web shooters. I like that Tony noted that he made the web and how incredible that tensile strength is.
Take that, organic web shooters. Peter Parker's scientist is back.
Exactly. And when he when he webs Tony to the door, he's like, "Get me out of this."
I like how he was even with Tony there and knowing Tony knows who he is and all that. He's still this unsure 16-year-old kid until Tony wins him over, but he still acts like an unsure 16-year-old kid.
Mm-hmm. And two great points about that, Shane. During that epic set-piece fight, when the Falcon system, something like, you're not supposed to talk so much. It was so perfect that they have him bantering like that.
Yeah.
Because he's a kid and it's part of it.
And he's excited for them.
The humor's part of it's like a defense mechanism for him.
And exactly. And then when he reacts to the Winter Soldiers, "You've got a metal arm." And what I loved, though, was even though in the humor they showed you how powerful Spider-Man is, he was beating the Winter Soldier in combat, basically. And I loved the instant respect that Steve Rogers had for him.
Mm-hmm.
Where you from, kid? Queens, Brooklyn.
Yep.
And like Steve saw, this kid is not like a bad kid or anything like that. And they handled Spider-Man pitch perfect in that film.
Yep, I
pitch
agree
perfect.
with you.
The costume is the best version I've seen on screen yet. I agree with Murd, and I can't wait to see how they handle him. And I hope all the mistakes they made in the last Spider-Man film, they're going to rectify all that and not have a gazillion villains in it, and just focus on this wonderful young actor and how well he captures Peter Parker's world.
And we didn't need a retread of his origin at all.
Oh, thank God, yeah.
Right in there, perfect. I liked how they brought in Ant-Man, and he also a little bit of hero worshipping with everybody, but that's what I would expect from that character and the way he acts. I love Paul Rudd's little quirky nuances, which he has in almost every movie he's in. I don't mind it. I
love him.
I just thought it was perfect to have him in and bring him in the way he is. Well, you might need to put a little bit of coffee in him, and opens the door, and there he's asleep in the van.
Yeah, I totally agree. I really felt like Spider-Man and Ant-Man balanced out all the death and darkness throughout the movie and just gave it that nice level. And I want to agree with you guys on, like, I was a little taken back about you have 48 hours or so, and he goes to New York to recruit. So I was like, a little disbelief there. But I totally forgot about it when Tony Stark and Peter Parker first met in that banter and the nervousness of Peter Parker in that room. I was just like, wow, this kid's a good actor. I'm sold in like 2 minutes. And I think I completely agree with you guys. Just a really good Spider-Man. Even the parts where they're in the airport and the Winter Soldier threw something at him, and then it comes whizzing back and goes, "You lost something, buddy." And it's just like, like I was just like, "This is awesome."
That shield's not obeying the laws of physics at all.
Yeah, I'm just like, I mean, I'm sure we'll get to this, but the part where it made me feel old when they're webbing up the legs of Giant Man, I was just like, these guys really know like how to write a good balanced film, You
remember that Star Wars movie with those things?
No, he didn't even say Star Wars. that really old movie, The Empire Strikes Back?
I also loved, speaking of Ant-Man's humor, when they're in the detention facility, he goes, "Hank Pym never trust a Stark," and Tony goes, "Who are you?"
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And, I do feel what you're saying there, JP, about how there was a little bit of suspension of disbelief required there, that Tony Stark, with all of his resources, like the best secret weapon he has is to fly from Germany to Queens to recruit a random 16-year-old kid with a little strength and agility and a bunch of homemade gizmos. But after seeing what they did with the character after that, I very quickly ceased to care.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Chris, can you hear me? I think we lost Chris. The computer froze.
We just have Chris's grinning face on
Yeah,
screen.
I know, he's a big smile.
and we are all frozen in the picture as well.
Well, now's as good a time, if we're still recording, now's as good a time as any to mention that, looking at that frozen smile on Chris's face. If there's one thing that was better than seeing a pitch-perfect Black Panther portrayal on screen, it was looking over a couple of seats to Chris and seeing the look on his face as he saw the pitch-perfect Black Panther portrayal on screen. He was just sitting there leaning forward in his chair, hands clasped with glee beneath his chin. Like, he was registering more childlike delight than his two kids were.
And the Black Panther, he just kept coming and coming. Like, he's the only one that got through those rocks or the boulders for the jet. So I was just like, wow, he's just a really nice balance of character and strength, and it's I just loved it.
Yep, that was the Black Panther was to me what Wonder Woman was from Batman versus Superman. Although the difference there is that he's not one of the very few bright spots in an otherwise dark and depressing thicket hedge of a movie. He was one bright spot among many. But all the same, from what we saw of him on screen, with his gadgets, his self-confidence, his self-carriage, the tantalizing glimpses we saw of Wakanda, his realm, I'm even more excited for his solo picture now than I am for Wonder Woman's.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think that they created a good balance with his character and his personality, because the one part where Hawkeye goes, "Hi, I'm Clint," and he goes, I don't care. But it's just like fitting, because you're in the middle of fighting. Why would you care about someone's name if they're about to punch you? You know what I mean? Like,
he doesn't even care about why any of these people are fighting. He's just on Iron Man's side so we can get a shot at Barnes.
Yeah. We haven't talked about what characters haven't we talked about yet? I feel like we're missing a few.
How about Hawkeye?
Hawkeye, yeah. Do you think? I mean, he kind of took a lesser role this movie. What do you guys
he
think
absolutely did. But I thought for him, quote, retiring after Avengers 2, I thought it was just the right part for him to come in, because Cap would have said, "Hey, I need help getting Wanda out of there. I'm not too sure she'd be pleased to know that she's being held against her will," if he even thought that, which I'm pretty sure he did. And she's probably not realizing it. Can you go in and get her? I think he'd be the only one that would be subtle enough to sneak in, do that, battle vision, and get out of there without much fuss going on or destruction of anything.
Yeah, and knowing what we know of Clint's rebel spirit from the comics, it makes good sense that he'd be, other than Captain America, he's probably the biggest champion of personal freedom on the team. And it kind of gives one pause. So he's the one who Cap sends in there to rescue Wanda. And Chris, once we get him back, I'm sure he'll agree that resonated with him as a longtime Avengers fan, knowing that there was, for a brief while, a little bit of tension between Hawkeye and Vision, because Hawkeye kind of had a crush on the Scarlet Witch for a time as well.
I totally forgot about that. We haven't talked about War Machine either. I really felt like, just the one part where they make the truck bigger, Ant-Man and Captain America, and he's just like, oh, come on. Like, the whole film, he's just like, oh, man, like, just those small little things in there. I was just like, that's funny. I'm like, that's such good acting. It just, like, doesn't have many lines. He's just like, almost as if Don Cheadle walks in there and doesn't have to really do much. He's like, okay, now I'm War Machine. You know what I mean? Like, he just does his thing, but it all fits together and just makes sense. So I thought that was kind of nice.
Yeah. And I'm glad that we were able to get through this movie without him making the ultimate sacrifice.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
There had been some rumors floating that would happen, but nope. As a matter of fact, he doesn't die. He doesn't come through it unscathed, but if anything, he might be a little bit stronger as a person now for his injuries. And we don't lose any characters. Crossbones and T'Chaka are really the only significant deaths in the whole movie.
Well, and his character in the comics, doesn't he go through a period where he's claustrophobic and can't get in the suit?
Oh, what, Rhodes?
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
Does that ring a bell, Chris?
No, but to be fair, I've not read every incarnation of War Machine. I didn't read the Chuck Austen one because I just won't read books that Chuck Austen writes usually.
I'll have to do some searching.
I'm not the best person to answer that question.
I don't know why I thought that, but I thought, oh, well, that'll make sense if he can't get back in the suit for some reason, that he'll be somebody that's at the headquarters coordinating things or whatever.
He can be Oracle.
Yeah, I almost felt like that was a metaphor for, because he's such close friends with Tony Stark. Okay, well, we can't physically cut off like an arm of Iron Man, but the second best thing is to wound your best friend to really enhance his kind of rage, and that builds upon learning about his parents and everything else. So
motivation, strength.
Yeah, compared to doing it
push him a little further over the edge.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought that that it kind of made sense in the idea of escalation, right? So that's a big thing in a lot of these films. You get to a point of like, what can you do next? How can you escalate the level of drama or interaction of characters?
Yeah. And again, I'm just glad they did that without actually killing the character.
Yes, definitely.
I wanted to comment on the Black Panther, if I may.
Go ahead.
I was the minute they first of all, Chadwick Boseman is an outstanding actor. I mentioned in the previous episode how wonderful job he did portraying James Brown in Get On Up. So that was a tour de force performance. I was very confident in how he was going to portray T'Challa, and what I knew right away that they had it, because except for the moment when his father dies, whenever he speaks to the entire movie, he's calm, he's poised, almost sedate, and you just feel this almost preternatural confidence about him. And they just captured the character so well. And as we mentioned earlier, the uniform was perfectly rendered. The fact that he was easily the equal of anybody he was fighting in that movie. If not superior to. Basically, and I loved how in those climactic scenes, it was again right in keeping the character that he decides not to take Zemo's life, and in fact he saves his life so that he can face he can't escape justice by taking the way out via suicide.
The living aren't done with you yet.
Yeah, exactly, and the accent he chose was so perfectly done. I believe right away this is T'Challa, this is the Black Panther. I cannot wait to see how they fully realize his world in his own film. Again, that teaser scene at the end, I almost jumped out of my seat with giddiness, because not only do they show the technological world of Wakanda, and that just in that hospital, in contrast to the magnificent veldt outside of it, but then they showed the massive panther icon. And then Steve says, they might come for us. And then he just says, let them try. And I'm like, oh, that's T'Challa in Wakanda.
Enemy of the state, yo.
Yep. It was wow. So perfectly handled.
Yeah, I thought so too. I'm very excited for that movie to come, and to see how much they show since he's already been in this, what route they take with that movie. If they start from before what we've seen, or if they really go right from this point forward.
That's a good question. Yeah, it'll be fun to find out.
What else?
While you were offline, Chris, we said a few words about Hawkeye. I personally, we talked a little bit about his limited role, how he showed up and broke Scarlet Witch out, and how that was fitting. I think that he's sadly like 0 for 4 so far in Marvel Comics movie appearances, as far as getting a decent-sized role to play. It's like he always is just that guy who shows up with a bow and arrows and does stuff. And I think in the second movie, we were talking about that, the Age of Ultron, when he's revealed to have a wife and family off in the country someplace.
Well,
that's a way of kind of jettisoning him, because
it is. But even in Ultron, they made it a joke about him saying to Wanda, "Here I am. I'm a guy with a bow, and the city's floating. Nothing makes sense." So I think the movieverse acknowledges that he is just a guy with a bow, but yet still finds a way for him to be important, even if it is in limited capacities.
And Shane, I would agree with. I'm sorry, Mark. Go ahead.
I just wish we got a little stronger sense of his personality, as seen in the comics.
And that's what I was going to say about that was I thought that scene in Avengers 2 was perfectly realized what Hawkeye's about. I thought it was very well written by Whedon. But I think what we're suffering from is Hawkeye is such a rich persona and history in the comic book universe that we all know so well that because of the nature of these stories, they're going to be hard unless they give him his own movie. Which Jeremy Renner's a fine actor; I'm sure he could carry that.
Oh, absolutely.
Team him up with Black Widow for that matter.
Yeah,
I thought convinced that she can't do a solo movie, which I don't agree with at all.
I don't agree with that.
Put the two of them together.
A solo movie, but also, there's just not enough time to fully bring out what we know Hawkeye to be. But what I did love in this movie was there's not even a hesitation. Cap needs him. He's there.
Yeah.
And I love when he says to Natasha, "Are we still friends?" when they're engaged in fisticuffs. And that's why that fight scene, I was just the biggest goofy grin on my face. I'm like, God, this is like every great Marvel battle I've ever read. Like they so captured the tone of when these heroes end up in these clashes and the banter and like as even though it was such a serious subject, you knew like, all right, nobody until what happens with Rhodey at the end, no one's really going to get hurt here. It was just so much fun and when Scott becomes Giant Man, I mean, people were actually cheering. I mean, it was clapping because it was just it was so much fun. That was a real gift for the fans, I think.
Now that whole scene, the only problem I had with that, and I think it's a fitting portrayal of Tony's character. However, that doesn't mean I like it. I really thought it was a cheap shot for him to smack his repulsor into Falcon when Falcon lands to see if Rhodey's okay. Because none of them are intending for anybody to get hurt. Everyone's chosen their sides. Your own person couldn't control his power from his Mind Stone and still hurt your other best friend, and you're going to take it out on Falcon for stopping to make sure he's okay.
Tony's not the most rational person under the best of circumstances. He's been shown, this version of him has been shown to have a certain impulse control problem. So that's just Tony being Tony.
And Rhodey is his closest friend.
Oh, absolutely, and that's all fine. But I thought, man, what a dick.
He is.
Well, Tony can be a dick sometimes.
He sure can.
It's just part of his character.
I think this movie brings it out more than any other movie about how dysfunctional he can be. Even with friends around, even with what he's trying to do, he still is very much alone in a lot of ways just because of the way his mind works.
Well, when they're in the Avengers compound and Natasha says, can you just check your ego for just a minute here? I mean, she's trying to get through, because this is after she had helped Steve get away.
Yeah.
And I found, I think maybe Danielle mentioned this. If not, forgive me if it's somebody else. But I was surprised they didn't show Natasha and Wakanda at the end.
I was too. I thought she would have been right there.
So I'm interested to see where they take her character.
Shane,
in future installments.
I think he had on stun mode when he shot Falcon.
I'm sure he did.
Just a general visual filmmaking thing, even beyond story and actor portrayals. Just cinematographically, I thought this movie was very impressive.
I did too.
In my opening statement, when I said I thought Game Changer was not an overstatement, going back to fight scenes, as we were talking about, this movie, especially that opening scene with Crossbones in Lagos, if it didn't invent a new visual language, it at least came up with a new visual dialect as far as superhero action filmmaking, borrowing pretty heavily from action movies and just fight choreography and just like the cinematography of violence. That scene in Lagos, the hand-to-hand fighting, I'm sure there was some sped up motion camera work going on, and just the large, the big occurrences as well as the more intimate fisticuffs happening, like Scarlet Witch bringing down that building, making use of her powers, and of course the enormous, as Chris called it, the set piece midway through. How well choreographed that was. Mm-hmm. Even part of it practical effects, as you said, JP, and part of it CGI. I thought it was very well done, and I think it may have established a new paradigm as far as how to stage massive superhero brawls on screen.
I totally agree.
All right, Matt just Skyped in as well. Hello, Matt.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Good. How are
Hello,
you?
my friend.
Heavy. I heard you guys are wrapping up though. I came out. My 5:30 ran a little bit longer than I thought.
Well, that's all right. That happens.
Yeah.
You'll come in for your 80-20 and get done.
In and out.
Please, I had a bet with myself, so either way I'll win. But did Adam bring up that all this could have been averted if they would have just had a conversation?
I did not say that about this one, Matt.
Damn it! I lost $5.
Well, if you don't know what to do with that $5, pass it on.
Yeah, situation is...
My wife holds my wallet, so I'd have to pry it out of her hands anyway.
I know what that's like, and that's not a bad thing.
What's been the general consensus so far? I
been
have
going
to
through
admit, I already saw it twice.
We've been going through
Nice.
the big plot points, favorite parts, talking about Peter Parker, the fight scenes, Black Panther.
Generally good. Everyone liked
Absolutely.
it, or
Every single one of us.
that's good. I found the movie to be fucking outstanding. There was I wish we would have saw more Zemo. I just thought it was great. Before the MCU, I was never a big Cap fan, but this just continues to elevate what I think of the character, and a lot of that goes to Chris Evans and the way he plays the character.
Absolutely.
I mean, some of the things I saw was that, there was no tension, and that they could have talked their way, and there would have been. And I'm trying to think of at what point. But presumably, I don't know how other people took it. When do you guys think that Steve knew that Bucky killed the Starks?
Only when he saw the video. He always knew that Hydra. Remember in Winter Soldier, Danielle reminded me of this.
Right.
When he's in Zola's lair, he realizes Hydra killed Howard Stark.
Right.
But I don't
Right.
think he knew Bucky did it until he saw that. That's how I interpreted it. The film
You see, I from the moment that we saw in Hydra, I figured Bucky killed the parents, and this just confirmed it. I figured the absolute earliest that Bucky might have said I killed the Starks would have been when after the helicopter rescue, where Bucky was saying that he's not the only Winter Soldier. I thought that might have been that would have been the earliest that Steve would have definitely known, because again, when I see stuff like they could have just talked it out from the part where the helicopter, which was awesome, where Cap was trying to pull it down.
Yeah.
To me, that's one of my top moments out of the entire movie. From that point on, there would have been no point where Steve could have said, by the way, Bucky killed your parents, but don't be pissed at him because I still want to work with him. So
Right.
There would have been no way he could have just brought that in there that it wouldn't have caused an even further issue. Some of the outstanding moments that I thought was, definitely the battle scene. But I remember when Meg and I went to see it, and I knew it was coming with Scott. And I just said, here we go, right before he became Giant Man. And she goes, what? And that's when he went, and he got big. And just to see, I like the fact that you could see his eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I describe his facial expressions, even though you couldn't really see his face, but you could see his eye movements. The kind of the joy where he was laughing, like, oh, ho, 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 and he's holding on to Rhodey's leg. I actually thought that scene overshadowed the final battle. I thought the final battle between Stark and Steve, it was a lot more personal, which I liked. So the two battles felt different, but I thought the scale of the airport scene was just so massive that by the time you got to that last one, not that you could dismiss it, because like I said, it was more personal, and I think it needed to be a smaller scale, the final one. But I think it kind of took a little bit away from the final battle.
We were saying before, Matt. I like the personal nature of it as well. I just think they were just very different battles to create very different tones, because they were at different narrative points in the film. So,
Matter of contrast.
All of a sudden, we're all outside.
Did you feel someone needed to die in the movie?
No.
no, not at all.
No.
Okay.
No.
Because, again, that was one of the criticisms I saw, and I didn't think so because, again, I didn't see Batman versus Superman. I don't want to compare it. But I didn't feel like these guys wanted to kill each other. They were having a disagreement, and I think Team Iron Man was just looking to apprehend I mean, one of the things is Spider-Man should have been in there because he was a 15-year-old. But I heard the Russos said that Stark looks at him as the most powerful, non-lethal backup he could have brought into this fight. So that kind of gives me the impression, Stark never wanted to kill any of them. To some extent, they're all still friends. It was just, you guys are wrong. You have to come with us. We're not going to kill you, but if we have to beat you up, we got to beat you up.
And that's why the letter, Steve says, the tone at the end is so important. Because it tells the audience, all right, despite these profound disagreements that have gone on here, and even the sense of betrayal, that these men have a bond that ultimately that's going to still be there. So,
I did like the fact that the Accords didn't go away, that everything didn't get resolved in this movie. I saw some people complain that it was more set up, like some of the other movies and I didn't get that impression. I thought they gave you a little bit of Spider-Man, which was more the final post credit, the post credit scene. Mm-hmm. You got a little bit of set up for Black Panther, but I thought for the most part this seemed pretty self-contained as just another chapter in the ongoing MCU storyline.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, I do too.
Okay. I've seen other ones where they felt like they were just jumping off points. I think Age of Ultron suffered a little bit from that.
Yeah.
But I didn't get that feeling at all in this one. Let's try and a quick go. I wish there would have been more Black Widow. I think that was one of Danny's issues as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I thought everyone had a little bit of enough character growth. I really liked the fact that the same writers and directors are doing the Infinity War chapters. Makes me so giddy. Not that I didn't like Joss Whedon, but I think you're going to get something different, so it's not going to be like recycled. And I know people keep saying about the Marvel formula. Well, guess what? James Bond's going to have a 25th movie, and you know what? They all have the exact same formula. So they make money. People go to see them, and if Marvel has a formula, screw them. It's working. Why would you want to change?
Yeah, I agree with that too.
So I think the next Avenger movie is going to be a little bit different, just tone-wise, but I'm really glad after seeing Winter Soldier and Civil War that these guys are going to come back for it, because I think they treat the characters a little bit different than Jaws does, and that's not in a bad way for either side. It's just it's a little bit different that you can see something. You can see a little bit more growth in them.
Well,
I agree, sir.
And you want these next Avenger movies to have a different tone because they're dealing with things on a grander scale from here on. It's not all Earth-bound. As much as the first Avengers wasn't either, it was still all grounded on Earth. I think the potential for these next two Avengers films has the ability for them to be outside of Earth.
Oh, Shane, I couldn't agree more. My gut feeling is we're going to truly see the cosmic scope that the Avengers can operate in, and because we're dealing with Thanos, we can only assume, of course, that we're going to see, cataclysmic narrative going on here. I mean, huge world-shaking events, and I also I anticipate some of the characters may die, or at least die temporarily because the Infinity Gauntlet's involved.
Right.
In those stories. So,
any chance we're going to get Nomad now that Cap is kind of gave up the Captain America identity?
That's a good question. I mean, to me, that they're clearly setting up the Secret Avengers, that concept, perhaps using Wakanda as a safe haven, essentially. So that's possible too.
Having seen the movie, well, first of all, just to backtrack, of course, always I know exactly what's going to happen, and this was one of those situations where I thought Cap really needed to die in this because it happened in the books. But then after seeing it, I just thought it made so much more sense. Just the way it ended, I thought was appropriate.
I agree.
But I did want to ask, having seen the movie, who would you guys have been on Team Cap or Team Iron Man?
I think we were unanimously on Team Cap.
Yeah,
we're all Cap.
We were.
Yeah.
Okay. I agree. I understand that there has to be some type of accountability, but after Winter Soldier and seeing that Hydra was so intertwined into what S.H.I.E.L.D. was, could you really take the chance that the Accords wouldn't basically driving their own agenda?
Right, absolutely.
And forget, Hydra, you're dealing with global bureaucracies involving self-interested governments and factions. Why on earth would you turn over your team to politicians who are inevitably going to try to use you for their own purposes? Like we said before, Tony's overcompensating because he feels terrible about what happened, and that's understandable, but you're getting in bed with, people who at best are self-interested and at worst are immoral. So, come on.
I did like the fact that this movie seemed to kind of tie up everything, even from the first Iron Man. Not tie everything up as in its conclusion, but it incorporated in the first Iron Man. You saw about his parents' death, and then even they brought in Ross to play a factor. So it seemed like the older movies, they found some way of incorporating little bits and pieces, just as a reminder of, hey, we've been around for a long period of time. And that's beyond Vision saying 8 years ago when Mr. Stark came out that he was Iron Man. So that I thought was brilliant writing.
Yeah, I agree.
With Zemo, I know Marvel movies the Marvel villains get crapped on a lot. Do you think he was a good villain? Do you think he was kind of meh?
I thought he was a great villain, as I said earlier, because he basically was. I mean, he was obviously a highly experienced soldier and intelligence operative, but he was basically a guy who lost his family, and he had because of his background, he had the tools in his grief to lash out. I thought it made him one of the most frightening villains that we've seen yet in the Marvel Universe.
Yeah, he didn't do anything other than push information around and really took down everybody.
Frightening, exhibiting a deadly level of skill, yet subtle. It's a very dangerous combination. Yeah. And he's only going to get better as he appears in future films.
I agree. I like the fact that it wasn't to take over the world or destroy mankind. And to some extent, it was a little bit like Iron Man 2, where...
Whiplash.
I was trying to think of it. Was it Vanko?
Yeah.
Where he had mentioned that if you show that God can bleed, then the sharks will come after him. Whatever the line was, kind of that thing that the Avengers seem strong, but if you can start to show their flaws, well, then they're not as strong, and other people are going to start to recognize that.
Yeah. All right. What do you think of Frickin' Swears? We're going to start to wrap it up.
All righty.
I go 5.
5, easily.
5.
Oh, 5 for sure.
I'm going to have to follow in and be copycat and say 5.
Excellent. We all 5'd.
High five. Where do we rank? Is this number 1 now on the MCU list? Is it?
Not for me, no.
It's damn close on my list, Matt.
Yeah, it's up there. Definitely top 5.
For me, it's tough. I mean, I'm back and forth between this and Winter Soldier, basically.
I'm in the same boat, Chris. If Winter Soldier, either one that I go with, it's going to be slightly edging out the other. And I feel that, I know, Adam, you mentioned before you prefer the Thor solo movie franchise. I think, to me, Captain America is the most solid from the first through the third, have the most solid movies.
I agree
100%. You took the words right out of my mouth.
I agree with that.
I think of all the franchise they established so far, I think Captain America is the strongest.
Yeah.
Although I would say, let me throw in a word from Peter the Rios here, because we were. He was president at Wild Pig for Free Comic Book Day, and we talked a little bit about this movie. He had far more mixed feelings about it than we did. There were a number of things that bothered him, actually. He said he didn't want to be on this episode because he didn't want to be a downer. But one of his concerns was that this wasn't really a Captain America movie.
It was more Avengers 2.5.
Right, it was an Avengers, exactly. Avengers 2.5. It was really, as Danny said, this movie was what Avengers Age of Ultron should have been.
Yes.
What Whedon said he was going to do, which was a more personal, intimate, character-driven film without a huge global threat to take down. And so his concern was that Cap was kind of marginalized in a film that bore his name in the title. That was Peter's.
Well, here's my rebuttal for that. The amount of screen time that it's the Bucky story supersedes the amount of screen time that essentially the Avengers are there. And if you think Winter Soldier, how much of the movie is Winter Soldier actually in there, and how much is the whole Hydra aspect of it?
Oh, yeah.
So the same way, it says Civil War, but that was just kind of the B. Essentially, that was the B plot of the A plot of the Bucky storyline. So I think because of the fact that the Avengers are in there and all these other characters, even though it was the B plot, it gets more press, and that's just really selling the movie. But to me, it didn't feel like the Avengers movie. It just felt like I said, that was the B plot, and that was just part of it. That's why the final end of it had just Bucky and Cap fighting against essentially the real villain, Tony Stark in this.
Yeah.
I just have one last word because I know we're checking off here. So the Russo brothers are making the next 2 Infinity.
Yes.
I just have one word. Quasar. Just take in consideration.
I knew you and I were both thinking this.
Thank you. Yes,
But there is going to
Quasar.
be another Guardians movie before that. So.
Okay, whoever's directing that, I know who he is. One word, Quasar.
Well, they supposedly they hinted that Ms. Marvel, or I'm sorry, Captain Marvel will be in Infinity War.
Yeah, I saw that too.
She's getting her own movie eventually too. So
Yeah, and I'm still pushing for Rachel Nichols to play that role.
All right, and one last thing about the second post-credit scene. How great was it for Spider-Man to get a spider signal?
Spider-Man will return.
Yeah.
Was everyone? I'm sorry, I know we're signing off, but just because I came in, I'm one of the people that came in late.
That's your fault,
General
man.
consensus. Yeah, no. Hey, I had a theft investigation I was working on. Come on. What's the general consensus of the new Spider-Man?
Loved
Good,
him.
bad.
pitch perfect.
Best movie Spider-Man yet.
My biggest complaint is that Aunt May is way too smoking hot.
I'm okay with that now.
I'm actually with you there, man.
I've made my peace with that. I'm good.
Just because I might be focusing more on her than Spidey in the Spider-Man movie.
I'm all right
and
with
that
that.
might be the only misstep that I see in this branch of the franchise.
Ever since A Different World, through my cousin Vinny, I'm good with that. All good. All right. Well, that's it.
We're good.
Our
That's
movie
good.
review.
Yeah.
Oh, good heavens. See, I'm
Yep.
not ready now.
We could probably go on for another half an hour, but
I'm sure we could.
We're on a schedule here.
We schedule that. See, I'm not ready yet. Stop doing that. Tell them to talk somewhere. All right. Visit us at comicgeekspeak.com. To send us an email, the address is comicgeekspeak@gmail.com. To leave a voicemail, the number is 267-702-6642. Stop by thecomicforums.vanillaforums.com and let us know what you think about Captain America Civil War. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook. Thanks, Matt, for joining in, even though you were late, you bastard. And as always, we are uniting the world's mightiest heroes, one listener at a time.
You got it on Wednesday, and it was talked about it going to the volume up. These guys will talk about it, everything that geeks love. Who takes a laser beam, opinions like the seasons on everything you read. And comics, movies, games, toys, artists, Comic Geek Speak, comic Geek Speak, comic Geek Speak, comic Geek Speak, comic Geek. Uniting the world's mightiest heroes. This is Comic Geek Speak.
I do what he does, just slower.